Welcome to my tutorial on gradients and masking. This is a part of a series that I'd like to do about some of the basics of digital art. This can be applied to many different programs. Currently I'm using Resolume Wire. However, these specific things can be used in many different programs, including Photoshop, CorelDRAW, and the like. It's not specific to this program. A lot of these are programming concepts as well, and I believe that it's important to kind of understand how gradients and masking are related. So this is just basically like an introduction to gradients and masking. Most of us already understand that gradients are a one color to another color and the gradations in between. Usually these are made by basically having one value and then transitioning by adding one color to another, which as they phase into each other and phase out of each other, the values lessen and increase on the other side. And so you get this gradation in between. So for instance, the white into black and the 256 shades of gray in between the final value. Our system is set up on a 256 color value. So for instance, in this example, I have a gradient here. This gradient is white on the left and black on the right. However, you also notice that I have a linear down below, and the linear is the same exact thing. Nothing seems to change, and there has been a change as it notates here. 8-bit unassigned single channel integer. It's basically telling us that I've taken this linear value of 256, and what I've done is I've converted into a texture. And so basically there is no difference between this gradient here, which is white and black already created, and this one, which is basically saying my minimum value, which is 1, which is important to know that white is 1 and black, which is 0, and the 256 shades in between those two colors. And the reason being that this will be important later is that black is transparent, which is 0, and white is 1, which is opaque. And that's important to know, and I'll show you an example of that and why that matters. So here is that kind of example. This is just a very basic, generic example of just the straight gray and white. I have over here a masking set up. Your programs will be different, but the principles are the same. The same principles apply in Photoshop. You'll have a layer mask instead of a mask node, but the principle is the same and it will apply the same way. You'll also notice that I have a solid color here that's set up. I'm going to use this green color, and the reason being is because I just don't want to. I want to kind of differentiate it from the black and white, and I want to give it try to give as clear example as I possibly can, right? So I have this green shade of color that's going across the screen, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this gradient, and I'm just going to click it into the mask, and now what you see before you is you see that the white on the left-hand side, it can't be seen through, and it's transitioning through all the 255 colors of gray, and then at the end where the black is, it's completely transparent. This is important because this is how gradient masks can change your outlook on how your pictures are made, right? Because with this technique, you can control how much of a value is being used from one side to the other. But it doesn't stop with just gradients. You could use, in theory, different shapes and different sizes to basically navigate that space, right? So I just wanted to kind of give a quick example, something that might help. Again, here's a checkerboard. There's a solid color, which is the one that we just used, which is a solid green, but I'm going to use the checkerboard. And if I click that checkerboard and I place it into where the solid color was, just as we had before, the gradient is the mask, right? Or is the mask, correct? And then the checkerboard is the pattern in which we're applying it to. And so you'll notice the checkerboard is completely able to be seen on the left-hand side and becomes transparent as it moves on into the scene. And so this is just an example of how that works. And it's important to kind of, I'm trying my hardest to kind of iterate how this is working. And the reason for that is because this value system that we're using here is going to become important. So I'm going to disable the masking, and we're just going to use a different example of a similar kind of gradient system using this ring, or this logo kind of ring test thing that I made up. So we have a triangle with a donut around it to kind of just have this generic kind of thing. And then I also have a colorize node that's set up, and it's set to white currently. Okay. And so when I take this and I plug this into my mask, you'll notice that now when I select onto the mask, like as you would expect, the black areas are transparent and the white areas are white. However, when I change my color value from white to gray, the values of the image that's being masked is transparent, or starting to become transparent. We'll make this a little bit clearer. If I use a solid color, you'll be able to see the transparency background, which is usually being used in most programs. You get a checkerboard on the background to let you know that it's transparent, this checkerboard pattern. That's a little bit different from the checkerboard that I have. I apologize, that's probably a little bit confusing, but I just wanted to kind of have something that delineates the two differences and just kind of give you an example. So if I have this gray value and I push this gray value as I get closer to the black value, it becomes completely invisible, and as I increase it to the white value, it becomes completely opaque. Now, there is an interesting process that's happening here, right? However, if I were to take this colorize, this black and white image that's being created here, and I then push a pixel blur, which basically blurs the image, I now actually have values of gray in between the black and the white. And so as you can expect, if I were to take that pixel blur and I were to connect that to my mask, now I actually have transparent fuzzy edges that are being masked into the space. And that is because this value here is from black, which is transparent, all the way to white, which is the green value, right? And this adds, this also is a part of, like, for instance, if I put in the checkerboard, you'll notice that there's this fuzziness. Nothing has changed with the checkerboard. It's still that texture, but the masking has been created by the ring test that I have here. And to give a kind of a better example, or to give you a different example to kind of illustrate this as well, I also have this image that I have of a lamppost. Now, I've done some other little node changes here. None of this is really important to the heart of what we're doing right at this moment in this particular test. Just know that these right at this moment is just to help us resize this image. And so I'm able to put this image where it needs to be, and that's the reason for that. None of this is important here, these other three nodes. But when I take this node here, this merge, and I drag this to the mask, now I actually am using that lamppost to be the mask for the checkerboard. And the reason being is because any value that's black here in the image is transparent. Anywhere there's the area of the image is white is the part that are opaque, right? And so you get this kind of, you get this checkerboard image over the top of the white areas. Same thing, I could change the color to green, and you'll notice that you now have this interesting image here, right? Now, one of the things that I could do alternatively is I could invert that color. I could invert that that space, that black and white lamppost, right? And I could create a new mask based on that. And so the values would then be the reversed of those images, right? Oops, I have it backwards. I'm sorry. We're going to go to invert RGB. And so there. So now we have this one and we have this one. And if I join those, I can actually have like the black values and the white values separate from each other, which creates this image, right? And what I could do is I could also put that green on top. And so now you have more of those transparent areas that are showing through. The checkerboard is probably a lot more harsher, and so it's hard to kind of see those areas. If I were to, like, for instance, change this to, like, let's say, we'll make this like a blue value. If I take that blue value and then put it into that mask, notice now it's a little bit easier to kind of read what's happening there. And this is crucial. This was crucial to my understanding because gradients can really change the way in which, not just gradients, but how masking is created through that black and white process can change the way in which you do graphics. And it's important to kind of understand how this all works, because then you can control other parts of your image. Or it really, honestly, it's not just images, it's graphics, it's everything, right? And so, like, for instance, I have this image here, and let's say I wanted to brighten in this area, just this area at the lamppost, right? And what I could do to fix that or do that is I could lighten the area by basically taking, well, we could do, like, I could take a second part of that image, right? Actually, let's not do that. Let's do, we're going to do levels, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take from here and I'm going to drag it into here. There's a way to do this in Photoshop. It's very similar, but basically I've taken that image, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the values of that image. And you'll notice that it changes the entire values of the entire image, or it changes all the values of the entire image, right? And I may not want that. I may just want specific areas. Now, when I take this and I plug this into here, now I just get just those values for that specific area. And what I could do is I could join that or marry that or dovetail that into something else, right? So if I put this in here, notice now we're just talking about the bright areas. And so now where it's joined, I gotta join my color. Sorry, I gotta join my color here. Now, excuse me. Now where it's joined, actually, that wouldn't be that one. That would be this one. Now we get this kind of image. And I've got something else going on here. What have I got going on? Okay, so that's the brighter areas. And I've inverted RGB. I have luminance set on. And you'll notice that it's doing some strange stuff here. I've got something else going on. I'll have to figure that out. So what is basically going to happen is that these areas that are brighter will then be brighter in the main image when you marry them back together. And I'm not sure. Oh, I know why. See? Okay. So now I'm going to go back to merge, and I'm going to go back here. Now we've got the right thing. I apologize for that. So now, when I go back to this image, this area is brighter than the original, which actually should be this one. So if I go to this one and I go, this was before and this was after, you'll notice that it's brighter in only the areas that I want it to be bright, right? And you could, in theory, create a black and white mask that only selects specific areas with shades of gray that would taper off the areas in which you want to brighten or darken. And the good thing about that is within programs like Photoshop, you can actually swap between the black and whites very easily. And so you're able to sharpen the areas. You're able to, like we just did here, lighten those areas. We could take this, this image here and I could blur it. Okay. And so we'll plug that in, and now we have a blurry image, right? And I plug that in right here, and so now just the areas that are in the front and the foreground are in clear in focus, and the stuff that's in the background should be blurry. And I can just kind of bump that up to kind of give a better impression, right? But we could also change the color, for instance, right? So we have the blur, and then I could do another colorize. And all these things can be done in Photoshop. Colorize is an option. You could do hue, saturation, and lightness, and then just change it to one singular color instead of multiples, right? And that would give you that value. So then in this particular case, we're going to change it to, like, let's say blue. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to plug that into here into the mask. And so now we have this kind of blue hue going on in the background. And it's still kind of, the reason why it's kind of bright is because we're using a join. What I could do is use a video mixer, video instead of the join, which will be, video mixer is more like a layer system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this one to the top and this one to the bottom. And now I'm going to delete the join. And so you'll notice that now we get more of like a Photoshop-esque kind of feel, right? Where I can control the levels. But that's the basics of how gradients work. I think it's important to kind of, or excuse me, masking and gradients work. I think it's important to talk about these subjects because as you understand how this works, there are ways that you could affect how things are changed within an image. Thank you for watching this first tutorial of this digital arts series. I'm very interested in all kinds of different programs and little bits of parts of things that we can all benefit from. And I find this subject very interesting. There's lots more to this, and I'm looking forward to making more tutorials like this one. If you have any interest in this kind of thing, just let me know below in the comments. I'd really love to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will talk with you guys next time. Have a great day.